Hello everyone. Today we are going to study history chapter 1, what, where, how and when. First we have to know what is history. So history is chronological sequence of events of the past. So to study history, first we have to know what is history. So history is a chronological sequence or account of events from the past. So chronological means in order to the events that happen in order of the time. So from the starting to the end. So with the earliest starts from the earliest period. So that is chronological sequence of events from the past is called history. So the study of the past is called history according to timeline. According to timeline, the sequence of events from the past is called history. So now we have to know why we have to learn, why we have to know about past or history. Why should we study history or past? Why we have to know about the past or history? So we have to know about our past or history to as it tells us about our so to know as it tells us about our ancestors or our past, we have to know or we have to study the history. Next, we have if we study history, we can learn about the ancient culture and traditions. So we can know about cultures, our ancient culture and traditions. Next, we can also get solutions for the problems from the present. Okay. Now, when did this happen? sequence of history. So historians use chronological sequences for better understanding. Chronological sequence means the order of events with respect to time. Okay, so chronological sequences means order of events with respect to time. So which event happened first, which events happened later. So that is the thing which helps historians for better understanding of history. Okay. So the timeline of history is divided into three parts. That is prehistory, proto-history and history. So timeline of history is divided into three parts: prehistory, proto-history and history. Prehistory is a time where no written records were found. So the evidences for prehistory was only the archaeological sources. No written records. So for prehistory there were no written records. So then people did not know how to write. There were only evidences of archaeological sources such as tools and weapons they used. So proto-history is the time period between prehistory and history. Okay, so proto-history is the time period between prehistory and history. There were some of the written records, but it was not deciphered. So it was not in a readable form. So that period of time is called proto-history. History is a time period where people were civilized and written records were got to know about the timeline of the history. It is divided into three parts: prehistory, protohistory and history. Prehistory is a time period where there were no written records and evidences were only of archaeological sources, that is tools and weapons which they made and used. Protohistory is the time period between the prehistory and history. History is the time period where people were civilized and written records were found. People were civilized and people knew how to write. So there were written records. So this is the timeline of history. And so BC stands for birth of Christ, AC stands for Anno Domini, CE stands for Common Era. So the year of birth of Christ is called the year of zero. So the events which happened before the birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity or the Lord. So before the birth of the Lord or before the birth of the Jesus Christ, the events which happened were counted backwards and were said to be BC, that is before the Christ. Events before the birth of the Jesus Christ were considered as BC, and the events which occurred after the birth of Jesus Christ come under AD or CE, which is Anno Domini or Common Era. Okay, so this present it is 2021. So we can say 2021 AD or 2021 CE. That is 2021 Common Era. Now let us know so we can say the name of the chapter only says all the these are all the question words: what, where, how, when. So these are all the question words. What is history? What can we know from the past? Where did the early people or where did the people from past live? How can we know about the past? And when was it? When it happened? Okay, so now let us know what can we know about the past. What can we know about the past? We can know so many things about the past with the help of the sources we got from the archaeological department and other literary sources. Okay, what can we know about the past? We can know about the food habits. We can know about the food habits of the people from the past. So what kind of food they had, we can know about what kind of food they used to have. Next, we can know what type of clothes they wore. So there are so many materials of clothes, that is wool, cotton, or clothes made from leaves of the trees and plants, and some clothes were made from the animal skin. So we can know all about their clothes. Next, we can know about houses. In what kind of houses they lived. So we can know in what kind of houses they lived, whether they had huts and buildings, or they made houses from wood, or they made houses underground. So we can know about that. Next, occupation. Next, we can know what occupation they used to do, like farming, herding, hunting, priest, trade, musicians, etc. So there were so many occupations: farming, herding, so agriculture, doing agriculture, rearing of animals, hunting of animals, and spreading about the religious cultures and traditions, informing us about our cultures and traditions, that priests do that, and trading, musicians, etc. So they used to follow these kind of occupations. So we can also get to know about their lifestyle, that is children back then, what kind of games they used to play, what kind of songs they used to sing, and what kind of plays they used to see. So we can get to know all these about the past. finding out what happened. How can we know about the past? That is, if it is an event that happened yesterday, you can read a newspaper or listen to the radio or watch TV. So we can know about yesterday. Okay, radio and newspaper. If we want to know what happened last year, we can ask our friends, parents and grandparents. They can tell us what happened last year or what happened 1 year ago. Okay. So how can we know what happened 100 years ago? So we can know what happened 100 years ago through historians and archaeologists. That is the study of history. So this is why studying history is important. Now let us know where people lived. Now we got to know how can we find out about the past and what can we know about our past. Why is it important to study history? What can we know by studying history? We learned all these. Now we will learn where people from the past lived. Okay, they lived on the banks of river Narmada. That is hunters and gatherers. Hunters and gatherers used to live on the banks of river Narmada. Hunters and gatherers are the people who hunt down the animals and collect food from the forest, which is fruit, seeds and leaves for their food. So these people lived on the banks of river Narmada. Next is Sulaiman and Kittar Hills. So people lived in the region of Sulaiman and Kirtar Hills 8,000 years ago, where first rearing of animals and growing of crops such as wheat and barley started. So Sulaiman and Kirtar Hills region is the place where people lived 8,000 years ago, and this is the place where they first grew wheat and barley, and they started rearing animals such as goat, sheep and cattle. The next place is Garo Hills. This is the place where development of agriculture started. So Garo Hills is the place where the development of agriculture first started. and the region of Vindhyas. So, to the north of the Vindhyas region is the place where they first grew rice. So, the rice cultivation started in the started first in the region of north of Vindhyas. Next, the river Indus and its tributaries. So, the next place is banks of river Indus and its tributaries. This is where the earliest cities emerged. That is around 4,700 years ago. So, on the banks of river Indus and its tributaries, the earliest cities were emerged, which was 4,700 years ago. Next comes the banks of river Ganga and its tributaries. Development of cities started on the banks of river Ganga 2,500 years ago. To the north of the region of Ganga was Magadha kingdom. Magadha kingdom was a very large and powerful. So, some of the kings of Magadha kingdom were Bimbisara and Mahananda. So, we can study about the Magadha kingdom in the further chapters. So, these were the places where people used to live. People started living in their early stages, and going on further, they came till the banks of river Ganga, where development of cities started. That is 2,500 years ago. Okay.